Hello, and welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up what's happening in business, why it's important to you, and our economy. I'm your host, Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm joined by Ed Seelover of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of the Sum and Substance. Ed, how's it going?
Lot to watch for out there. Check out tsscolorado.com. You'll see just what I mean on my website.
It's a great place to definitely check out what's happening in Colorado's business community. I want to move our discussion to a very interesting topic that we're seeing happen here in Colorado. We're seeing a growing shift in our housing market, and we have Shauna Lurie, a real estate agent with Compass, joining us to talk about it. Shauna, welcome on the Business Buzz.
Thank you, Ryan.
It's great to have you. For the first time in what feels like decades, Shauna, we're seeing a real shift in the Denver metro housing market. Inventory is surging to its highest level in years. Homes are sitting on the market longer. Can you break down for us what's happening with this, I'll call it power shift, if you will, from sellers to buyers, and what it means for those who may be looking to make a move right now?
Well, Ryan, I think it's important to realize we're coming off of those pandemic years where we had really, really low inventory and frantic buyers who were willing to overpay over list price and give up all the contingencies, inspections, and don't worry about appraisals. Let me just get a house, please. And now we're seeing a lot more balance where you've got 2 to 3 months of inventory, and people can take their time and make good decisions for themselves about buying a home, which is a huge purchase.
Yeah, now, and we were talking offline, like you do this. I mean, you're helping people buy and sell homes. This is what you've been doing for quite a while now.
20 years.
Yeah. So over 2 decades now.
Right.
But you're in the field. You're on the ground, as we like to say. I'm interested to hear, as we see this shift that we've, from a seller's market to more of a buyer's market, inventory are up, homes are staying on the market longer. What's the single biggest opportunity for buyers today that perhaps didn't exist 6 months ago?
Well, I don't know about 6 months ago, but one of my happier things for buyers are VA buyers and first-time home buyers, because those two sets of buyers really a couple of years ago hardly had a chance to get a home. And, I had a young woman ask me the other day, I'm in my 20s, how am I ever going to afford to buy a home? How am I ever going to get in? I mean, yes, affordability is another question, but at least we're seeing some opportunities for first-time buyers in VA and people who don't want to spend $100,000 over asking.
No, I know one of the things that we at the Colorado Chamber hear the most from our employer members is it's so hard to find homes for my employees to buy, whether that's be employees moving up here or employees that are trying to recruit to the area. Your outlook talks about, hey, we think we'll see some flattening of prices, maybe a slight dip, but nothing serious drop. What's it going to take to see more of a significant drop in home prices here, or are we never going to see that?
People always talk about, oh, the house prices are going to go down or we're going to see a crash. However, it would take, first of all, most of the homeowners in the Denver metro area have a lot of equity. So if they need to get out, and they also have jobs. The jobless rate is still pretty low, right? So those two things would need to change. If we didn't have equity and everybody didn't have a job, then much like in 2008 when all those homes went on the market all at once, that was the problem, part of the problem at least. So I don't think that's going to happen as much as everybody would like to see home prices go down, or some people maybe. I don't think that's going to happen.
And that's certainly understandable. I don't think anybody wants to see another crash like that happen. I know there's been a lot of policy efforts at the state capitol to try to increase the supply of residences, whether it be for rent or for buy residences. Are we seeing any of that on the ground yet? Are we seeing a boost in supply? How much would that affect home prices?
I definitely see a lot more apartment buildings coming up and new homes being built, but more on the outskirts where there's more land
suburbs,
available.
like
Yeah, where there's more land available outside of general Denver metro. So I'm not sure if it's keeping up with demand still, because we still aren't. I heard that once upon a time the rule was we needed 6 months of supply of inventory for a balanced market, and we're not really close to that at 2 to 3 months. So I think it's going to be a while
Yeah, Ed, I want to come to you, from your perspective of Colorado Chamber and a statewide view, because what we've heard from Shauna to an extent, I think, is we've seen a bit of a normalization, if you will, in terms of the housing market. And so from a broader economic perspective, how does this housing market normalization, what does it mean perhaps for our economy?
I mean, what it means for our economy is that the higher housing prices are, the harder it is, as I mentioned, to bring in employees. Now, I mean, there are certainly a lot of reasons for that, but I think the more that we can see housing prices come down with a boost in supply, that can also help in kind of getting more people working, getting more construction crews out there. I think you like to see this normalization, but I mean, the big thing we at the Chamber want is just people to be able to afford to live here. That's when we feel like we're going to be able to have a balanced economy. Yeah,
Sean, I want to come back to you because I feel like we oftentimes these days are talking about how it's a buyer's market, but that still means you got a lot of sellers who are, looking to sell their homes and what this means for them. I think according to some of the data you've shared with us, homes are taking longer to sell, and it's increased from last year even. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd like to kind of ask you, what advice do you have for sellers in this new environment, and how should they be adapting their strategy so that they can hopefully have the best chance to sell their home at the best possible price for them?
Yeah, it's a great question because you absolutely still can sell your house in a reasonable amount of time, but it's very critical to stage it properly, price it properly, and just be really prepared and be flexible. You might have to give some concessions, but you can definitely still sell your house in a reasonable time. It's just very important, more than ever, pricing, staging.
Yeah, so you can still sell it.
Absolutely. I put one under contract in a couple days last weekend.
Okay. Even though that the time to sell has gone up, you were still seeing those incidents where, houses are still moving in some cases.
Absolutely, and my colleagues as well. So there are still some that are going very quickly.
Mm. And I know you mentioned you're seeing the suburbs. The suburbs are always a place where you're going to see a little lower prices, a little farther out from the city core. Maybe this is too policy focused, but are you seeing any areas of the metro area in particular where, maybe a loosening of regulations from local governments is helping to boom houses? Are there any cities, counties, areas that are saying, we want to build houses, here's what we're doing to help that happen?
I have to admit, I'm not really sure.
That's okay. I was just curious if the word was out there on the streets.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty that you are sure about. I want to give you the last word, Shauna. What's the biggest piece of advice you have for those who are thinking about making a move with their house or buying a house or selling a house right now?
Well, if you're a buyer, you have lots of options. Just take your time. Make sure you hire a great agent who has experience and knows how to help you through all of the intricacies of a transaction. And sellers, just price right, stage it well, and also be flexible.
Okay. Shauna Lurie with Compass. Thanks for joining us on the Business Buzz. Ed, let's turn this new ballot initiative that could change the paychecks for hundreds of thousands of Coloradans. This proposal has been submitted to ask voters this fall whether the state should be permanently banned from collecting income tax on tips and overtime pay. This is a big deal for everyone from restaurant workers to hourly employees in many sectors. What's the core argument behind this proposal?
And let me just say something real quick. While it's been, they're starting to work on it, it would actually be on the 2026 ballot, just because of a quirk in Tabor that nobody wants to hear about right now. But the core argument behind the ballot that's coming from Advance Colorado is we think the state should be giving tax breaks to people who need it the most. And these are folks who are earning overtime. These are folks who are earning tips. Now, the reason these two areas are focused on is because the federal bill that passed in early July said that both of those sources of income are exempt from federal income taxes. If you're making overtime, you don't have to pay taxes on it. If you're making tips, you don't have to pay taxes on it. The state of Colorado in 2025 took proactive steps to make sure that they would decouple the state's overtime taxation policy from the federal's. That basically is saying, look, maybe the feds say you're tax exempt, but you still have to pay taxes on your in-state overtime income. However, that's not the case with tips right now, unless they decouple that policy as well. People who are making tips are not going to have to pay any income tax in it. So that is kind of the background to where Advance Colorado came from. They say, we want people to keep more of their money.
Yeah. Now, there's obviously that upside potentially for employees or tipped workers, in terms of being able to keep more of their money. And some would certainly argue that that has economic benefit for our communities. But let's talk about the other side of this, the potential downside. There's been some discussion that this could have some rather significant impacts on state budget and public services.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, one of the reasons that the state decided to decouple its income tax or its overtime income tax policy was because it anticipated a loss of $400 to $600 million in revenue if that was not decoupled. That's a lot of money that the state gets from taxes on overtime. I found an old 2021 bill that attempted to decouple or to end taxation of tips, and that's a lot lower number. We're looking probably about 30 million in that one right there. But for a state that just went through a $1.2 billion budget shortfall, cut services because of it, a lot of, especially majority party legislators say, this is not something we want to do again. We think that this is fine. People have not been crying out for an end to these taxes. We would like to continue collecting money on them, at least especially the overtime taxes, which had been kind of standard issue here.
Yeah.
But
I'm wondering, for members of the chamber and other businesses out there who are just now kind of starting to hear about this issue percolating, if overtime pay becomes tax-free for employees, does this change the dynamic or incentive for employers to offer those extra hours?
It's an interesting question, and I want to be sure to say the chamber itself hasn't taken a position on this. In fact, most of the industry groups haven't taken a position on this. They're really studying this to see what it means. Michael Fields of Advance Colorado has said, we believe that if we're a state that says you don't have to pay these taxes, that will be more attractive to people wanting to move here, possibly relocating jobs here, help out industries just in hiring, period. As far as what it means for businesses, though, that is still a big question. Some in the restaurant industry would say, of course, we want to see workers take home more pay, but there is also an issue where right now there's a big pay gap between tipped workers and non-tipped workers, where tipped workers can collect so much. They actually get paid less per hour as a base wage, but they collect so much in tips that they could be making $39 to $42 an hour, where someone in the kitchen may be making $20 to $22 an hour. Some restaurant leaders have said, look, we're worried that this is going to allow those tip workers to take home more pay, whereas times are so tight right now, we can't offer overtime to those non-tipped workers who are working in the kitchen. That's just going to separate it that much more. So I think there's a lot of questions about what this would do and whether this is a boon to business or not.
It's really interesting. I think it comes down to a matter of trade-offs, right? And how much of a plus is this for workers and employees and their ability to spend more, which is a big driver of our economy, and maybe save more as well, which is good for them in long term. Versus, will we see that big draconian, reduction in the budget that will lead to cutting of other government services, and I think from a business perspective, right? There's I could see how you could really be torn, right? On the one hand, you always want your people to do well. The better they do, the better we all do. On the other hand, the last thing you want to see is a reduction in services, whether it be transportation or public safety or higher education, which tend to be on the cutting block more times than not whenever we see reductions, because that has implications for the quality of life here in Colorado as well. And so don't know how this is going to play out. Not sure if Advance Colorado or any of the proponents have put forth any meaningful numbers on what they think this will mean in terms of our economic growth yet. Perhaps that's to come in. But I want to give you the last word on this topic and what you think we can expect over the months ahead.
I think we're going to expect a lot of discussion on that. And this is not a topic that I think people were discussing before. In fact, when I first wrote on the Sum and Substance about the decoupling of overtime pay laws, nobody seemed to get excited about it from either side of the aisle. now suddenly it is. And I think the more that the public starts discussing this, I think we're going to see where public sentiment lies. But I think businesses will want to dig into this too and say, what is this going to mean to the morale of my workers? What's it going to mean to my ability to attract people? And I think it'll lead to some good discussions here about the role of income tax.
I'll also be curious to see where labor unions come down on this in terms of the impact on some of the folks who are members of their unions and whether they think it's a good thing or not. And I guess we'll have to see in the weeks and months ahead as this thing plays out and gets some momentum behind it, if it in fact does so. Ed, we got to wrap up. From the new proposal to eliminate taxes on tips and overtime to the major shift we're seeing in our housing market, business continues to buzz in Colorado. For our viewers, our goal is for you to stay informed, to be engaged, and to get ahead of the game. So stay tuned for more in-depth business news and discussions here on the Business Buzz. For 9 News, for Ed Sealover with the Sum and Substance, I'm Ryan Frazier. Until next time.